Amongst the initial critical reception for Birth of a Nation in early 1915, there was no critical consensus that the film marked a turning point for the future of the art form of cinema. Those claims would come later in the year. Instead, in the first 2 months following the film's February 1915 premiere, white critics at news and industry outlets universally praised the film, speaking of it as a large spectacle and praising it for reconstructing history rather than anointing it as a true work of art. Some of the initial reviews, including Moving Picture World's critic Stephen W. Bush's, call out the film's racism. After praising the splendor and magnificence of the film, Bush then talks about what he calls the film's controversial spirit. Bush writes, "It was significant that on more than one occasion during the showing of the film, there were hisses mingled with the applause. These hisses were not, of course, directed against the artistic quality of the film. They were evoked by the undisguised appeal to race prejudices. The tendency of the second part is to inflame race hatred, having roused the disgust and hatred of the white against the black to the highest pitch." Despite the criticism, Griffith desperately wanted critics to understand his film as a work of art, voicing that opinion several times both in person and in print. For instance, when he spoke to the audience during the intermission at the film's premiere in New York, Griffith told his audience that his aim in making The Birth of a Nation was to place moving pictures on par with the spoken word as a medium for artistic expression. Griffith's framing of The Birth of a Nation echoed the film's publicity campaign, which cost Griffith an unheard of amount at that time of $12,000. The day of its premiere in New York City, Griffith ran an ad in the New York Times claiming that The Birth of a Nation was the dawn of a new art, which marks an epoch in the theaters of the world. Such a lofty statement would have surely riled up that same newspaper's theater critics, and many of the Times' readers as well, who still dismissed movies as a cheap lower-class entertainment that was not worthy of the term art. By that summer, as the film and its publicity campaign had reached more and more American cities, critics began calling The Birth of a Nation a work of art. For example, in this May issue of Motion Picture Magazine, one critic even borrowed heavily from Griffith's language used in his New York Times ad. He said that The Birth of a Nation marks an epoch in the history of motion pictures, and said that as a spectacle, as a historical document, and as an art, it is unequaled. As the film spread and attracted more criticism, framing his film as a respected work of art proved to be an essential strategy in Griffith's defense of his racist epic to stave off calls to censor or ban the film. If there's one thing that Americans love, it's the right to free speech. So Griffith found that it was much easier to argue against censorship than it was to argue for his right to spread racial hatred. In my next video in this series, doing a deep dive of The Birth of a Nation, we'll see Griffith's arguments and his appeal to art and history playing out when he comes to defend his film against a New York Globe scathing review of his film's racist ideology. So make sure you follow me so you don't miss out on some fascinating history.